Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another day of class. I trust we all have had a great weekend. The attendance is still pretty low, so please go and alert all your classmates that it's time for class. As usual, we'll give 5 minutes so others can join in and so the facilitator can also settle in. You're welcome. Okay, it's 5 minutes after 5, and I can see our facilitator is already here. You're welcome, Mr. Busayo. I'll just quickly take his profile and then we'll kick on with the class straight up. Okay, so today's class is on advocacy and policy influencing. And our facilitator for today is Busayo Oluwadamilare Morakinyo. Busayo Oluwadamilare Morakinyo has an unsullied passion for nation building and social impact. He has a background in history and international relations and master's degree in humanitarian and refugee studies. He leads the community engagement at Connected Development, an emerging social accountability that seeks improved service delivery from public servants. Busayo believes civil obligation is a crux of civil rights and daily encourages active citizenry through his Pan-African engagements. With a show of hands, with a warm welcome in the chat box, can we make welcome our facilitator for this evening, Mr. Busayo? You're welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Yeah, hi, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I bet we're doing very okay today. Lisa, you still not updated my profile. I no longer work with Connected Development.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You've not updated.
I'll be needing an update from you then.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Before I start, I want to first of all congratulate the entire team at Electoral College. Happy 4th anniversary. I think this set is also a legacy set because I remember when Electoral College started after the 2019 general elections, and it's been consistent from then till now. So congratulations to the entire team.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, and also big congratulations to this current set of folks in the Electoral College. I think what we're doing with Electoral College is remarkable, and it shouldn't stop. If for anything, we should refire, because much more than ever before, more Nigerians need to understand and need to learn, what's going on, so that we can be able to make awesome progress as a people. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to begin to do, even as we get into a new government.
Oh, I think we lost him. Sure, he'll join back soon.
Okay, so sorry. I mean, I got thrown off. I got thrown off by the network. Yeah, great. So maybe before we start, let me just have a sense of people in the room. Lisa, can people unmute themselves to speak, or you have to be the one to unmute them? How does this work?
Yes, they'll just indicate by raising their hands and We can unmute them.
Then you can, okay. So I just wanted to walk the room a little.
Okay.
I mean, we just had an election, right? I believe everyone was, old enough or had access to the internet, even if you couldn't move during the elections. I just wanted to have a sense of what about 2 or 3 people felt about the election and what they probably suggest we could do differently. Let's start from there, so that we can walk from there into the session for today. We can make it more practical, and we just enjoy ourselves basically. So I mean, by the show of hands, everybody you want to share your thoughts on?
Yeah, I think Cynthia is raising her hands. Please, you can unmute and speak.
Okay, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Cynthia Yinkere, and for me, my opinion about the elections will come from a process point of view. I think that a lot of our expectations were dashed. We expected so much more efficiency from the last elections, considering we had 4 years to plan. We noticed a lot of tardiness on the part of the electoral officials. There was a lot of confusion about which polling units some people were meant to use. That caused a lot of uncertainty and anxiety already for the voters. And I think for the experience to be optimal, there has to be that mental consciousness about what people are about to do if you're expecting that there is an increase in participation. Way before even the elections themselves, we had heard, and I think a lot of people agree with me, we had heard about a lot of voters not getting their cards and seeing cards in various areas, which was not supposed to be the offices, say the bush or some gutter or something. All that already added to the experience, even before the main voting commenced. Now, during the voting, we had a lot of either lack of tools, like your ink. Some people in my polling unit, we had to go look for ink in a church just beside the polling unit. We had a lot of issues with people not seeing their names, looking at boards when we were supposed to have been, looking at a digital process. So for me, I feel that aside from the issue of the political angle to the voting, there is a lot of service delivery issues that should be addressed, which will not even take as much money, that will not take as much money as the, political angle of whether you're finding your polling units or trying to get security or all of that. And I think that can be improved on. Thank you.
Thank you. Spot on. Any other person wants to go? Your thoughts on the election, what can be done different? I like the fact that she spoke about...
Okay.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
I want to appreciate the Electoral College for this opportunity once again. I also recognize our facilitator. I've been working with iLead Africa, and I always visit the Connected Development Office, and most time I see you. So well done, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead, please. Just in 2 minutes.
So about the election, I think so far, I would say this is the worst election we've had in recent times. Yeah, because what I say was we expected something better. When we look at what we budget for this election, I think we're expecting a very credible and fair election, but the reverse was the case. So I think going forward, I would suggest why can't we go digital? Because we are in a digital era. Can we come up with innovative ways that we can be having our election in a digital way instead of this primitive way of queuing up every day under the sun and the security threat that is all coupled with the election? Can we just think of, because I'm really impressed with the way the Electoral College conducted most of our election. I was like, if we can do something like this, why can't we replicate it in the wider society? So I think going forward, a lot of people need to start speaking on this digital way of conducting our election. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's just take 2 more people, 1 minute each. You don't have to appreciate anybody or anything, just straight to the point, 1 minute each. Let's Victor Balogun, let's take you and Makonjola Joshua, then we'll get cracking.
So thank you very much for the privilege to speak. For me, I would say this election has shown that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. We saw people came out to show that they are willing to change the narrative. A lot of people show serious enthusiasm and contributing their quota to fixing Nigeria. And although several hopes were dashed, but it has really shown that if the people are consistent, then the people in power, we have no choice than to yield to what they desire. Then again, for me, another key thing from this election that just passed is the fact that the Electoral Act is very, very vital. And that means citizens must be very conversant with the workings of the National Assembly. Because even despite the fact that there were several back and forth on the Electoral Act, and eventually when it was passed, and now that's what we have as our Electoral Act working, there are still several gaps. So that means citizens didn't really show much interest. A lot of us didn't pay more attention when those things pass through public hearing and several stages of the legislation. So Electoral Act is very vital, and going forward, citizens should be more proactive and participate.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Valid points you raised. Makonjola Joshua, please. Makonjola Joshua, are you there?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute. Okay. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, hi. Go ahead, please.
I'm fine. Yeah, thank you. What I would say is not different from what everybody has said. I think most of us, majority, were disappointed by how the election went. Even though I don't really think the result reflected the wish of the people to a large extent. But I think going forward, we as a people should know that, because along the line, we start seeing that this politician devise another antics, the tribal antics, the religion antics. I think going forward, we shouldn't be caught unaware. That's just what I want to chip in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. I mean, please, you can feel free to also share your thoughts in the chat box. What should we do differently? We may not be able to take everybody's thoughts, but you can just put that down on your chat box. And while everybody was talking, I was taking notes. I thought it was very important. First person spoke about technology, the use of technology. And one thing she said that hit me was the systems and processes that does not even require money. Funny enough, we have a whole lot of creative Nigerians, so it's not everything that is about money. You can invest a whole lot of money, and still not get the kind of quality of the work you want to get, the results that you want to get. And so I think it was very important. The other person talked about power and how that one of the things we take through advocacy and policy influencing is the fact that the people actually have power. And if the people have the power, the powerful people should be able to change systems. So I thought that was very important. Next person spoke about the knowledge of the electoral acts, and so we are in the era of court cases. We didn't have the opportunity to experience these court cases, in 2015, because the then president, Goodluck Jonathan, didn't go to court. But in 2019, we experienced, where they said there was no server. Now everybody's in court. I mean, nobody can say there is no server this time. And so it shows that our elections is progressive. And for me, that's one of a very, very big example of what advocacy and policy influencing, can do. So if you want more, you have to do more advocacy. You have to speak more. You have to, engage these policy guys the more. And so, great. Like I said, it always feels great to be back here. I must confess that I had stopped engaging publicly about Nigeria for a while. I was off social media for, almost all through the first quarter. I came back to social media in April after the elections. And for me, it was very deliberate. I needed to stay away and freshen up my mind and my thoughts from the Nigerian system for a while to be able to engage, because there's a level you get to where you begin to feel fatigued. But there's something I can never say no to. I can never say no to Kunle Lawal, number one. Number two, when I see the real opportunity, I'm not talking about going on TV or going on radio just to speak English. No, I'm talking about the opportunity to share my thoughts with people. From what I know, so that they can be able to share their thoughts with other people and do good work, holding government to account. You will definitely find me there. And so I always come back to Electoral College. So please, guys, this is going to be very short. Please pay absolute attention. Get ready with your questions. If you don't want to forget them, type them in the chat box so they'll have an enjoyable ride. Lisa, please help me with my time. When my time is almost up, just let me know. Because I have a tendency of getting a little passionate about, what we're doing.
All right, no problem.
We already know this. Right, so let's dive in. Okay, let's dive in. Advocacy and policy influencing. The goal is to strengthen the advocacy and policy skills of all of you on this call today for effective engagement with policymakers and duty bearers. Three things that are very important here to strengthen your advocacy and policy influencing skills. So I do not come as one who knows it all. I'm just adding little value to what you guys probably know. Some of you even know much more than I do on this, so have more experiences. So I'm just adding my own thoughts to what you already know. And that's one. Number two, the reason is for effective engagement. Effective engagement is a school of thoughts on its own. And it's one of the things democracy does in terms of participatory democracy, where it is no longer about just the people in government, but the people in government and the people they are leading. So when you now begin to talk about community engagement, stakeholders engagement, when you talk about the engagement within government, outside government, the engagement with citizens, this is very, very interesting dynamics, we always want to throw around. But this engagement on this level of advocacy is with policymakers and duty bearers. The reason is because if I want to advocate to you or to your community or to your rural or to your the king of your village, or even to your father or your mother or your community, I may not be influencing anything certain. The reason is because when I'm engaging to your village king, your village king is not a policy maker in the sense of governance. Whilst he's very important and relevant, he's not, a duty bearer. So I want you to put, when you see duty bearer, you put it in a box of those who, we send to either represent us, or those who are in government, or those who are appointed or selected. So what I mean is anybody who is in government, who is, maybe, let me give you a flat rate, who is paid with taxpayers' money, to perform the task of governance, is now a duty bearer. So this kind of advocacy we're talking about is different from the kind of advocacy we'll talk about, when we talk about community, the normal community engagement. So this is to duty bearers. The objectives for this is very simple. I'll try to touch on all of these objectives as much as I have time, so that you can, in my not saying too much, you're still able to learn and understand, what to do with this knowledge I'm sharing. And this knowledge, like I always like to say in every class, I think this is my 7th class here on the Electoral College, if I'm not mistaken, is that all the English I'm going to speak today would be useless except you begin to practice it, as a cohort, except you guys come together and put 1 or 2 together in terms of practically utilizing this skill. You just have it for knowledge sake, head knowledge sake, So it's very important for you to realize that one of my objectives is to help you identify relevant issues for advocacy and policy influencing. What are the relevant issues? How do we go about doing these things? At what point do we get to and we say, we have to do, advocacy, or we have to influence policy? The second is how to analyze the policy influencing environment, very important. The third is how to assess the policy structures and procedures. I may not touch on these because this is more practical, than theoretical. And I always like to say to every class, organize yourselves in groups. I know Lisa, some of these things, so that when you are getting results. The next is a policy influencing goal with different stakeholder behavior of decision makers. Then formulate a policy influencing plan. I still wish for a day when we're going to get full-fledged, as big as we want to get, so that we can be able to have physical interactions, and have interesting syndicate sections, so that we can move. So let's start. Definitions and concepts. So our working definition is simple. Policy influencing is the deliberate, emphasis on the word deliberate, and systemic process of influencing the policies, practices, and the behavior of different targeted stakeholders that are most influential on an issue that involves beneficiaries, increasing their ownerships and capacity on the issue. Policy influencing is the deliberate, emphasis on the word deliberate. Now, when you see deliberate, what comes to your mind is the fact that it's planned out. It's not, you don't dabble into it. It's not something that just happens. It's something that you have to have a strategy. You have to have a plan. You have to sit down, take time, formulate it, then you are able to now drive the process, right? So it's deliberate and it's systematic. It doesn't just happen by error, It's extremely, it requires a certain level of skill. Electoral College understands that it requires a certain level of skill. That's why I've been invited to share with you guys today, right? It's very, very important that we do not just take it like a walk in the park. Advocacy is a word that has been abused, reused, overused by every other person. But when it comes to policy influencing, it's deliberate and targeted, because you're looking at the behavior of different stakeholders. You have a bit of sociology, you have a bit of psychology, you have a bit of street sense. So it's important that you develop that skill for you to be able to differentiate between various target stakeholders that are most influential on the particular issue you are advocating to influence. It's very, very important, right? So activities around this can be singled out, or mixed strategies can be applied. So what this means is I can take one methodology, or I can take one or more methodologies, depending on the issues that are in context, or depending on the situation we have on ground. So for example, I'm going to be relying a whole lot on this new government with one of its major policy guidelines, that it has set in motion, that has made everybody buy fuel either between 488 naira or as much as 510 naira. It's a policy of government. There's so many policies cut across your local government, cut across your state government, cut across even your council ward, cut across the federal government. So it's for you to be able to engage with policy makers and decision makers who are stakeholders at various levels. You need to have this skill of advocacy and policy influencing. That's just what we're talking about. So we're saying that activities can be singled out. It could just be a one-off where we probably just hit the street for one time to make them know that, hey, we're here. You have to have sense. We, the people, are here. Or it can be mixed strategy. I'm going to go on radio today. Lisa is going to go on TV tomorrow. All of us are going to hit the street next tomorrow. We're going to begin to have meetings with various government institutions or people in government that we think have the capacity or have the influence on the issue. It can be us joining forces together. And we're saying, no, this coalition of civil society, including electoral college, CGID, blah, blah, blah. Everybody, let's come together and put our actions together so that we don't work in silos, depending on the situation. When there was a massive movement for the Not Too Young to Run bill, quote me anywhere, if Yaga went through that process alone, they would have never achieved the kind of success they achieved. Quote me anywhere. The moment Yaga was able to ensure that other people bought this very beautiful and fanciful idea, it became a movement, it became a team. So it now had Hydra-headed engagement styles that were deployed. When people were meeting members of the parliament, people were meeting with the executive, people were on the street, people were going on TV, some other people were going on radio, people were writing articles on the newspaper, some people were on social media tweeting. During the NSAS protests, for example, we saw those mixed methodologies. One of the things we actually didn't see were people who would go and sit at the table, because even if that was the strength of that protest or the strength of that policy influencing drive, you know, it was still a weakness of the drive. In 2012, when there was a petroleum subsidy removal by the Goodluck Jonathan administration, something happened. People were on the street. Some people went to meet with the government to negotiate. Some people felt that the negotiations didn't go well. Practically, the negotiations didn't go well, and we can see it in effect now, because what we couldn't achieve when subsidy was not removed, we have not yet achieved it now, all through the Buhari administration, where they claim to have paid trillions and trillions for subsidy, up until now, when subsidy is claimed to be removed. So guys, it's important for us to understand that from the micro to the macro level, policy influencing is a tool that every one of us needs, you know, to thrive in a democracy. Because policies are not just made for ants or animals or insects. Policies are made for humans, and a single policy can destroy your life or would make your life better. So I think that's important for us to stress. Okay, great. So let's look at the difference. Look at policy versus advocacy versus policy influencing. And I think this is very important to also set the tone for this conversation we're going to be having. Policy covers a much broader range of activities that might or might not include policy influencing. Advocacy is like a mother that has so many children, because there are various styles of advocacy. There are various ways you can advocate. And understand, like when I started, I observed that policy influencing is not when I'm trying to engage with people from my community. Except, of course, I'm dealing with a power block. So, for example, let me explain what this power block may mean. This power block may mean that the chairman of my estate has become so powerful that he has made a rule that after 10 o'clock, nobody should come back to this estate, you know, without seeking my opinion. You know, power corrupts. They say absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, so there are some strong people like that who can be able to command that level of influence. Now, you can now begin to try to influence that policy. But by the way, I do not know the reason why an estate chairman will make that kind of a rule when I'm there, you know, because it will not even stand, right? But when you pick advocacy alone, advocacy covers a wide broad of issues, wide range of strategy. This strategy may be, you know, from social media engagement. It may be, like I said, going to the TV, going to the radio, mass media, newspaper, print, you know, calling a press conference, hitting the street for a protest, you know, having courtesy visits, you know, you can name them. It's mass, it's big, it's huge, right? But policy influencing is targeted to duty bearers, people who have the power to make decisions within a space. That is what policy influencing is targeted at. And so that's the difference between advocacy, which is the mother, and policy, which is a subset, policy influencing or lobbying, which is a subset of the entire part. And I hope we're going to get to understand this more. Yeah. So when do we advocate? We advocate when there are problems that affect disadvantaged communities, when there's a blockage in our programs. Let me give an example of this blockage in our program. For example, the government wakes up, the last government wakes up, and Emefiele, according to the skit maker, says the government is going to put a ban on cryptocurrencies. There were people who were trading cryptocurrencies on a large scale that had to leave Nigeria because of that policy. Because of that blockage, some people had to move. Some people had to, you know, find themselves in other countries that didn't want to go because there was a blockage in that program of cryptocurrencies, you know, in country. And some people went to other countries who accepted the trade of cryptocurrencies, right? So when there's a blockage, it's a good time to advocate. If there were 1 or 2 or 5 really interesting people who would have said, hey, let's have a conversation with the guy at CBN to understand, there could have been some level of engagement and influence in there, right? That was a good time for people to advocate. Thirdly, when you understand the root causes of a problem, it's a good time for you to advocate. When you understand that the problem of petroleum subsidy in itself is not that subsidy is bad, but the corruption around subsidy in Nigeria as it pertains to petrol, then you now realize, you know, a good way, you know, to do advocacy. It's very important. I'll just chip in these things, you know, so that we can be able to relate, so that I don't talk over our head. When there is a policy implementation gap, it's a good time to advocate. A government comes in and it sees that the country is facing multi-dimensional poverty with over 110 million people living below the poverty line, with an inflation that has hit almost 22%, and you remove fuel subsidy. The problem is not in the removal of fuel subsidy. The problem is in the gaps within the policy implementation that would not make it easy for people who are already poor to survive, until you're able to create the right palliatives. And I say this with all consciousness, the right palliatives to support that removal of petroleum subsidy, for example. So you can say, yes, Nigeria has been subsidizing West Africa, blah, blah, blah. Your arguments can be very valid, and it's also very valid. But the truth of the matter is, the reason for government is to protect the welfare of the citizens and to ensure national security for the citizens. So if marketers are taking this subsidy and selling these petroleum products outside of the country, it's not the responsibility of you and I as citizens to hold them to account. It's the responsibility of government to hold them to account. So the policy around subsidy may not be wrong in itself, but there are definitely implementation gaps that you can advocate about. It's a very, very important thing. You know, you also advocate when you find a link between local, national, regional, and international concerns. For example, education. Nigeria has the single largest amount of out-of-school children in the world today. Some few years ago, it was 13.3 million. As of last year, UNICEF said it was about 20 million out-of-school children. You don't know the value of 20 million out-of-school children before you put it in context. Gambia, for example, I'm not sure Gambia is up to 20 million people. There are states, there are countries in Africa that I'm not sure are up to 20 million people. So what it means is a collection of 2, 3 to 4, 5 countries have children that are not going to school in the Nigerian population. These are local concerns because you see out-of-school children on the street. You see their almajiris on the street. It's a national concern because our index, our human capacity development index is getting worse by the day because we've not massively educated our young children. It's a regional concern because as at 2014, from 2013 to 2015, guys, we had the Boko Haram insurgencies. It's still there, but it's reduced now. That placed the Northeast, on a very terrible pedestal. And it also became an international concern, when the Chibok girls were kidnapped or the Dapchi girls or the boys that were kidnapped. So when you understand the link between local, national, regional, and international concerns, it's a good place for you to advocate. Also, you advocate when you want to demand for the rights of the people. We cannot overemphasize this. Let's make a move. Let's make quick moves. Types of advocacy, guys. There are various types of advocacy. But we'll just look at few. Number one, geographical. The geographical advocacy is when, you are targeting duty bearers according to demography. So it could be duty bearers at your local government level. There are a whole lot of Nigerians today who do not understand that the responsibility for basic education, for example, lies within the purview of the local government. What the federal government is doing, for example, through UBEC, it's just an intervention. And so I was part of people who were pushing for the Universal Basic Education Act to extend the act from first 9 years to 12 years. And at the time, I had to tell the people, I said, calm down. What are we talking about? It is the responsibility of local governments and state governments to cater for education of its people. So we practice a very not too interesting federal system that takes responsibilities from who responsibilities are supposed to be under and puts the responsibility on that federal government. So the same federal government who is in charge, who is supposed to be in charge of the military, because they have to protect the territorial integrity, and the same people who are concerned about education, there's going to be a disconnect. So when you have a minister of education like we had in the last 8 years, who didn't have any reason to be a minister of education, you would discover that the amount of out-of-school children will continue to deepen without any solution. So geographical advocacy is simply targeting duty bearers where they are from the local government. There are some issues that are supposed to be solved by the State House of Assembly, not the federal parliament. There are some issues that are supposed to be solved by a local government chairman, not even the state governor. Some state governors are building markets. It's not our responsibility to build markets. Markets should be built by the local government. And when you look at all of these misplaced priorities here and there, you'd realize the reason why Nigeria is where Nigeria is. The second type of advocacy, guys, is the advocacy that has to, be factored around timing. Advocacy at particular times, either a day of celebration. Right? Guys, how many times have we celebrated Mother's Day this year? Who can help me? Put it on the chat box. How many times have we celebrated Mother's Day this year? Let me know if you guys are following. How many times have we celebrated Mother's Day this year? First person, 5 times. Someone says 5 times, 3 times. Okay, go ahead. How many times have we celebrated? 2 times. You know, have you noticed 2 times? Thank you, Victor. Have you noticed that every Mother's Day there's a I can see some protests is starting. They are not all Mother's Day. Okay, great. Every Mother's Day there is always a conversation around women, around mothers, which is great because all of us came from a mother. You know, but one of the ones that pains me the most is when it's Father's Day. And guys, it's in June. Please celebrate your fathers. This month, we have one Father's Day, and I think it's the only Father's Day we'll have this year. When it's time for Father's Day celebration, some people will still celebrate the mothers because some mothers were fathers, you know, also, as well as they were mothers. And so it's always very interesting for me, you know. So everybody always advocates, you know, on particular days. But for me, and I see not of warning, those of follow me on social media who I follow, if I see you celebrate any mother on Father's Day, we'll have a problem. Let's celebrate for once. It's this month. I've announced it again. It's this month. So celebrate your fathers, please. It's very, very important, right? It's very, very important. Now, so what I was headed to was the fact that there are some advocacies that are time-bound. International Women's Day, for example, is celebrating women and is probably speaking to an issue that women faces. Is there an International Men's Day, by the way? I want to look out for that. You know, that celebrates men. Hey, thanks, Cynthia, June 18th. It's Father's Day, guys. It's Father's Day. I'm saying it again. It's Father's Day. So there are times where, you know, some advocacies just hit home. For Children's Day, for example, when it's Children's Day, like it was some few weeks ago, you know, there's particular issues we bring to the fore. Just advocacies that are time-bound. There's some advocacies that, you know, comes up when they are celebrating. There's some advocacies that, you know, probably underpins a terrible situation that people talks about. You understand? So the advocacy that comes, you know, with timing, and it's very important. Then, you know, under types of advocacy, thank you guys. November 19th, International Men's Day. I'm seeing November, I'm seeing October. Which one are we going to believe now? We finally have 2. If we have 2, that's good news. So at least we'll celebrate, you know, the men and fathers, you know, fathers the more. You know, so the last but not the least type of advocacy is a single issue or range of issues advocacy. We've spoken about, for example, single issues. We've spoken about education as a single issue. But what of those times when the issues are many? Like we've been talking about Nigeria, our problems are hydra-headed. There's education, there's power, there is water, there is housing, you know, range of issues, you know. So advocacy comes in those lights, you know, also. I think it's very important we all look through that. Now, this is, if you've not gained anything from all my, you know, loud voice, you know, synths, this is one thing I do not joke with in every of the class I take, because the dimensions of advocacy has always been abused, especially within the context of the Nigerian civil society space. And I say this in all sense. I'm releasing an article tomorrow. Those of you who follow me on LinkedIn or who, I'm publishing it tomorrow. And I think it's going to be a good read because it underpins the saddest point of my work in the civil society space. And I think it's going to shed a whole lot of light around what I'm going to share with you guys now. There are 3 dimensions of advocacy, but with not mince words. The first one is when you advocate for the beneficiaries and the marginalized community. The second level of advocacy is when you advocate with the beneficiaries and marginalized communities. The third and the highest level of advocacy is when the marginalized beneficiaries advocate for themselves. And I'll tell you how this works. Because our enlightenment comes on various levels, guys, it's difficult for all of us to have unified understanding. So in my work in the civil society space, in almost a decade now, I have realized that the civil society is supposed to trigger conversations, stimulate conversations, engage with citizens to bring them to the consciousness of the problem. The reason for all of those engagements is for the people to take up responsibilities for themselves and begin to engage. But we also know that that has to be a process. So, for example, let's pick in context. Let's pick a community that has a water crisis. So our advocacy point is because the community doesn't have potable drinking water. And we know when communities do not have potable drinking water, what happens? There are health challenges, there are growth challenges, you know, there's going to be the economic challenges. And we know that in the context of Nigeria, primary health is still weak. So when a child is sick, there's no affordable health care. So parents who do not have enough resources will have to take from their businesses to ensure that they treat the child in very expensive private hospitals. So the problems are hydra-headed. From just water problem alone, you can take about 4 to 5 major problems that can happen from there. So you as a member of the civil society now goes to that community that has been marginalized because they do not have water. Water is the content. And you're saying, my local government chairman, these people do not have access to potable water. That is our advocacy point. What we want is for you to ensure that they have water so that the people will not, you know, take this dirty water they are drinking, so that the healthcare outcomes would be greatly improved, so that the economy of these people would be better for it. That's a level. The people do not understand the problem. They feel that the problem is caused by their village people. They feel that there's a witch that is killing their children, because that's the first thing that goes on in their mind. It's not their fault. You know, poverty has a way of making you feel everybody, you know, everything is a witch, is witchcraft. You know, and that's why we need to fight poverty. You know, so those of you that are scared to go to your villages, the reason why you are scared to go to your village is not because there are people there that want to kill you. The reason why they look like that is because they are poor. Now let's make this joke. You know, take the witches and wizards in your village, right? Build air-conditioned houses for them. Supply power for them. And ensure that the air condition is always at a freezing level. They'll not be able to fly. You understand? You know, so witchcraft will stop where development begins. Try it out. If you think I'm lying, try it out. Go to your village. Look for the witch of your village or the wizard of your village. You know, put them inside air-conditioned modern buildings. Put them there and let AC blow them. They will not fly again. They will not have desire to fly. You understand? So the people would always ascribe their problem to spiritual issues because that's the only thing they understand. Now, you as a member of the civil society goes back to your community and you say that, hey guys, this your problem is not witchcraft though. The swelling of the stomach of the children is not witchcraft, it's because of the kind of water they are drinking. So you begin an advocacy and say, hey, I've met the local government chairman, I've come back to you people in the community, I met the community first, and I've told them that, see, this your problem is not witchcraft, let's come together and strategize and let's go and meet the local government chairman and tell him the amount of people that have died, you know, because there's no potable water, blah, blah, blah. And you all do that process. It's good at the first stage. That is you advocating for the beneficiaries and the marginalized. But if your advocacy stops where you are the mouthpiece of the community, you have failed. It's a failed advocacy. It has to move from this level to the next level, where it becomes like a partnership, where it becomes you and the community, where the community are taking more active roles, where those community members are the ones who would even call you in the morning. Hey, we not heard from you. What is the local government chairman say? And you can confidently say to them, fix a meeting with the local government chairman, because sometimes when the borehole is finally done, the borehole needs to be maintained. You may not have all the time to come back and do that for them. So you must build their capacities enough to do what you are doing. Then you come in once in a while to support them, to correct them. Hey, you did this, it wasn't right. This is where monitoring and evaluation comes in. You'll see that at the later part of this slide. Right? You say, hey, okay, you go and do this, they go and do it, they come back, they give you feedback, you say, hey, there are better ways to do this, this is how you should have, spoken about the issue. You are building their capacity. You are training community with the information you have to do what you think they should be able to do. But you see, the highest level, like I said, of the dimensions of advocacy is when the beneficiaries and marginalized themselves are able to take up their own unique issue. When they're able to take up their own unique issues by themselves, based off on the fact that you started for them, you went to working with them, and now they can be able to take it up on their own. So the problem with the civil society space in Nigeria, for example, is we have tried to become the of the community. In fact, let's call ourselves the catalyst of the community, because until community is able to do the work I would do, then I have failed in my advocacy, because I am not sometimes the direct beneficiary of the solutions. For example, I've worked in over 500 communities, over 500 local governments in this country today. I can confidently say I've worked in the 36 states, I've worked in 11 other African countries, and I can tell you for free that if my desire is to ensure that I become the star boy, to always go on Channels TV, to always be on Ice TV, speaking English, talking about the problem, I am a part of the problem. Because the moment I'm able to understand that the solution doesn't dwell in me pushing myself or pushing my brand to equipping communities to be able to, by themselves, hold their own governments to account, then I have failed in my advocacy drive. So I think this is very, very important that everybody gets this. If you've not gotten anything today, the dimensions of advocacy should sleep in your mind. You should wake up to it. Because as an active citizen, this is what you are called to do. And you can do this with various channels. I'm going to share that with us. But please, your advocacy work, that ensures that you are the only one speaking for the community. Today you come and say, the people, the community are dying. This one, this one, this one. No. If your advocacy stops at that level, though it's good, but if it stops at that level, your advocacy work is not complete. It must move to the level where it is you with the community in partnership. Then it moves from there, where you can easily pull out from the issue, and you know that the community will take it over. That is the highest level, and I call that level the level of community transformation, because community have now woken up to their responsibility to take their lives in their hands without having to wait for you to speak for them. I think this is important. So let's go back to policy influencing. I just needed to establish advocacy as a pillar and policy influencing as a subset, so that you can understand how the dimensions of advocacy, for example, can play, when you come to policy influencing. And so I'm going to be sharing on this acronym called CLASP, and it's very simple. The C stands for credibility. And this is where we'll talk to ourselves frankly, guys. There are a whole lot of people that should never become advocates of anybody. I'm not even sure they should be advocates of themselves. The reason is because they do not have credibility. Credibility has been thrown into God knows where. There are civil society organizations, for example, that have gone to communities and made the communities worse I went one time to a community in the Niger Delta region, the South region, and they were hostile. So I know that those interesting people do not take nonsense. You know, I'm talking about, you know, the communities around Delta State, communities around River State, you know, they don't trust civil society guys, you know. So I started trying to understand, you know, have unofficial conversations with them. And I discovered that people had come into those communities, promised them heaven and earth, took their pictures, went to donors, collected money, but didn't come back to the community. So credibility has been brought so low that people, you know, would not even trust you when you have genuine intentions. So if you're on this call and your credibility, if you have a question mark on your credibility, stay away from public advocacy. Advocate in your house, advocate with your wife or your girlfriends or whoever or whatever you do. Don't get into don't spoil the waters you are trying to clean. What I'm saying is for you to understand that if you do not have credibility as an important principle of policy influencing, you will lose it. There are people in Nigeria today that when you hear their voice, you would hiss. Why? They lack credibility. Some people during the petroleum subsidy removal test in 2012 traveled with the federal government's jets to Abuja and came back and raised their hands and says no more protest with no blueprint. So many years after, we're still talking about petroleum subsidy. Those people don't have credibility. I cannot listen to those kind of people talk to me. So credibility is a very important aspect. And because communities are marginalized already, don't make them become more marginalized. Please, don't do that. Don't do that. It's better you do not even try to help at all than for you to just help because of what you stand to gain or what you stand to benefit, and you mess up the entire system. So when genuine people come, nobody trusts the genuine people again. It's very important, you know, for us to, you know, note this. Secondly, the L stands for legitimacy. Who or what gives you the rights to interfere? I told this story. I've always told this story in every of these cohorts that we've had. I said I went to some place in Kogi State and I was talking to the local government chairman, the caretaker chairman, you know, and I just noticed some guy was just whispering so many things that I didn't understand. And, you know, and I got interested and I asked my colleague who understood the language there. I asked him, wow, what are they talking about? He told me that, you know, the head of engineering or the secretary, you know, responsible for repairs or what, you know, is telling the local government chairman that, you know, I'm not from Kogi State. So why am I coming to ask questions? And, you know, I made it very interesting for them. And I told him that, I mean, he may be asking who gives me legitimacy, but because I'm a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and because I pay taxes in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I can ask you questions. And when I ask you questions as a citizen, I deserve the response. And, you know, it threw them off balance. But the truth of the matter is, if I didn't understand, you know, on the legitimacy to what I stood at that time, that would have thrown me under the bus. I've done work. I'm from Nigeria. I mean, I'm Nigerian, obviously, but I'm primarily, my parents are from Ondo State. And I think I've done more work across the other states in Nigeria than I've done in Ondo State. So if you're asking me the legitimacy question, I mean, it should be that I should only work from Ondo State because that's where my parents are from. But no, my parents are from Ondo State. I was born and bred in Benue State. The only time interaction I had with Ondo State was 4 years when I went to the university. I went to University of Ibadan for my master's. I lived in Abuja. I've lived in Abuja for, you know, so long a time. So I'm Nigerian. I pay my taxes. So I have the legitimacy, you know. So it could be legitimacy could be a very tricky situation. What it means is, and when I work in other African countries, I've worked in 11 African countries, guys. The conversation is simple. I'm just stimulating. I'm just helping them grow so that they begin to ask you questions. I remember one time we did some work in Cameroon and we were going to leave and we were detained, not really detained, we're not arrested, we're kept aside, you know, because they needed to understand the reason why we had gone there and made so many moves, we're on radio, we're on TV, we're on newspapers, and they didn't want us to leave without asking us some few questions, right? But what we went there to do was to stimulate that community for them to begin to ask their government questions. So the government felt threatened by that, you understand? And that's why the dimensions of advocacy is very important. Imagine I went to Cameroon and we thought it was about us. They would have detained us, and Nigeria would have been negotiating with Paul Biya, who has been in power for over 36 years to release us. The next level of this conversation is accountability, guys. Accountability, this accountability speaks to transparency towards the deciders and the constituencies. The deciders are the duty bearers. How accountable are you? You go on advocacy and you begin to collect money. Man, I've seen things. I can't lie. I've seen things. If there are any press people here, please forgive me. But press men are very interesting people. Are very interesting guys. We've done some advocacies together, and they give you thank you for coming, right? Government wants to give you thank you for coming. And for me, my ethos, is that I don't collect money from government. The highest I've collected, when I go for advocacy is water, and sometimes I don't even drink that water. I just collect it based off on respect. When I travel for advocacy, I have my own water, because I have to be extra careful. It's not because there's anything that is going to happen, but sometimes you want to be extremely careful depending on the magnitude of the kind of engagements you're having. So I've had so much advocacies, and there was this time I was evaluating secondary schools in the States, in Plateau State. And we had to go through various schools, interesting to look at what is happening on the projects that were going on. And someone was, the M&E guys were working with us, we provided our logistics and everything. I told them we don't want anything. I noticed that for every school we went to for inspection, when we were leaving, the head teacher always called back the government guys and gives them an envelope. They call the envelope, thank you for coming. I'm not a novice to this thing. So I saw the process, and I was working with some few advocates also. And I was saying to them, observe everything that is going on. Because for me, what I try to do is I try to teach people practically also. So observe everything that is going on. There's a lesson I need to teach you guys from here. And at the end of going through 7 schools in a day across various communities, everybody was tired, beaten, hungry. And, we got back to the office and, the person in charge of the project says, I will just raise your blah, 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 your ESTA codes and all. And I let him land. And respectfully, I said, with all sincere regards, I said, Oga, I personally have a personal principle, and my organization also has a personal principle. We are forbidden from taking anything, where we work. We're not pastors who will take seed. We don't do that. The organization has taken care of my accommodation, my transportation, and everything, and my feeding also. And it was strange to them. It was really shocking. So the director felt that it was because, there were so many people. So the guy who was working with us from the ministry, will go to his office to do final goodbyes because I had to leave the next day. And the guy said, all of these schools even gave us something. And I saw him bringing out all of those envelopes. At first, he told me to come in alone. I told him, no, I need to come in with my guys. This is very, very, very important lesson to be learned here. And I said, for us, like I said at the office of the director, we don't take, any of those things. We respect that is your own system. That's how your system works. But our system works, totally differently. Now, guys, 2 things happened. Number one, the first thing I experienced was a feeling of disappointment, right? At first, because it felt like I was going to give them a bad review. And so we needed to appreciate these guys, because when I go on the field, I write my observations and I discuss some. I'm very careful. That's where you come up with street sense, street intelligence. I discuss some And the very critical ones I don't discuss there. I probably take it back and, you know, shoot a mail or something, you know, and report back. Now, from their apprehension to the fact that, you know, I didn't, you know, feel welcomed enough, it moves to a mutual respect. The mutual respect says the fact that I understand and I appreciate your effort. But for me, this is against, you know, my own ethos as an individual. I backed it up with my organizational standards. Because this is very, very important, guys. The moment you begin to engage in policy influencing, you must be extremely careful with money. You must be extremely careful with, you know, what people give you. You must be extremely careful. And this happens, especially when you engage with government. We're talking about duty bearers. I've had meetings with House of Assembly members. I've had meetings with, you know, in government offices also. And unfortunately, government offices have budgets for these things, right? Sincerely. So some of them will tell you this has been budgeted for. You understand? So, I mean, they'll do everything to convince you. My colleagues have gone for an advocacy at the government office in Abuja, and they told them they were not going to let them leave until they collect thank you for coming. In fact, my team didn't collect. I wasn't part of that advocacy. They came back, they gave me the feedback, you know, and, you know, the head of the agency was so angry that, you know, he had to even raise it as an issue the next time we went back. That, I mean, you know, we did not show that we appreciated their efforts and all. But it's against our ethos, because the moment you begin your drive around advocacy and policy influencing, you must be extremely careful. You must be extremely careful, because the moment your integrity is questioned, there's a problem. And so that the duty bearers does not pitch you against community or pitch community against you, you must be very careful. Guys, this is the technology age. They can show you someone, you know, might be there because of the sensitivity of the issue you're engaging on. You know, someone might be there, you know, recording you. You went for an advocacy. Harmlessly, they say, thank you for coming. You collected it, money exchange hands, it's on camera. The day that you say something, because in advocacy, there are different tones. You know, there are times when we are all speaking like gentlemen. There are times when we all go full-fledged back to back. You are now doing a back-to-back engagement, and they now release a video of you collecting money from a government official. Your advocacy is totally, you've lost credibility with your community because you lost the credibility first with the duty bearers. You must be very careful how inducements, money, contracts, connections, appointments. So if you want to toe this line, you have to be very careful. You have to be extremely, extremely careful. And that's why I say, if you do not have the capacity, please stay away. Don't get the organ stable more dirty. We're trying to clean it up. The next principle of advocacy is S, which is service. How are you being helpful? We've spoken about the negative things that you can do to affect your policy objectives, you know, or policy influencing objectives, how you can affect community, how you can lose trust with duty bearers. You know, it's about service. It's a win-win. Sometimes, I take you back to the dimensions of advocacy. Sometimes what you're advocating about is not the most important need of the community. This is another place that the society space has missed it. Because a donor says, write a proposal around XYZ, blah, blah, blah. You write that proposal, you get the grants, good and fine. When you get the grants, you now go to the community. Who tells you that that's the problem of the community? That's not. It may be their least problem. For a few years in my work in the civil society, I led the educational thematic of one of the organizations I worked with. And I thought the problem was around the buildings, the school building. Yes, it's a problem. It's a very big problem because, I mean, you've seen pictures and videos of students studying, you know, under trees, you know, and all of those stuff. Yes, there's a budget allocated to that. So we needed to follow the money to track those budget funds. But the biggest issue in the educational space is actually not the building, not the infrastructure in itself. Whilst the infrastructure is important, the biggest issue is the quality of learning. So when you say children should go to school, they finally get to school. What are they learning? Who are the people teaching them? We saw examples in Edo State of teachers who couldn't write. We saw examples in Kaduna State of teachers who couldn't write. We saw examples in Ondo State of teachers who couldn't write. So while we spend so much time advocating around infrastructure, there was a bigger fish to fry, which was the quality of education when people went to school. I dare say now, with my experience and understanding, that if you fix the quality of education, you may eventually fix the infrastructural deficits of education. And so we have some states where teachers are not being paid, and you expect those teachers to deliver. How will they deliver? So these are very important dynamics that sometimes you just get carried away because you've written a proposal and the donor says, oh, go and track the school buildings that are not completed, because monies have been stolen. That has its place. But if you want to look at sustainability, the buildings that are built today may be dilapidated in the next 20 years. But if the children who are in that school, are not trained enough or are not taught to be able to learn, in the next 20 years, they become vagabonds. They become members of occultic groups. They become terrorists. They become the Idamu Adubo, according to one famous philosopher called Portable, right? So guys, you must understand that this is service. And when it's service, sometimes you need to evaluate what you call help. Because sometimes what we do in communities will make them worse than we met them. What are the win-wins? When do you need to go back to re-strategize? When do you need to leave the scene? If it's about service, it's not about you. It's about the community. So I take you back again to the dimensions of advocacy until community are able to do for themselves what you have taught them to do. It's not about service, it's about you. It's about your ego. It's about that report you want to submit to the donor. It's about that news profile you want to get from Channels TV or Rise TV or whatever radio station. And that's why Electoral College was formed, so that more of you are enlightened about the system of governance, policies, and how it works, so much so that you can for yourself begin to speak on behalf of yourself, on behalf of your community. But I'm putting it as a challenge to you, that if you only have that knowledge without pushing that knowledge down the line, then you've not done anything. You've just wasted your time. So it's important to put that in perspective. The last principle, which is P, which is one of the most, I've spent a whole lot of time talking about the principles of policy influencing, but I would spend some time talking about power. What is your power base? How do you use it? Would you decide to join forces? Would you decide to have people that have divergent expertise? How would you make people believe in your message? This is very important. See, policy advocacy without understanding power and how power works is a waste of time. And I have a slide that explains this deeper, but you must be able to know your power base. What gives you that power? Is it knowledge? Are you a subject matter expert? You're talking about someone, when we started, someone was talking about the knowledge of the Electoral Act. There are some people that I see write some things on social media and I shake my head. Kule Lawal, his experience with that. There are times when there are some things going on and Kule Lawal will call me and will say, Busayo, what are these people saying? What are they saying? They don't even understand, these issues. What is your power base? Do you have knowledge? Because knowledge, they say, is power. Do you have skill? Are you skilled in engagement? Are you a skilled talker? There are some advocacies that are started by people and are seen to be fronted by other people. If it's about service, you will not want to put yourself in front. If it's not about service for Electoral College, Kule Lawal will not invite me to come and take this, because he can teach you guys all of this. But he understands that there needs to be that collaboration of forces from people who have been able to stay at various places and done good work so that they can be able to help in this service, by the way, because this is actual service. To you guys, it's service. You know, because, I mean, if I'm taking this class on a professional level, I would send them my bill, you know, I would say, no, you would pay for my time. You understand? But this we're doing here is service. Lisa knows it's service. You know, Lisa books me, you know, like 3 months or almost 4 months ahead of time for this. It's service, plain service. And so the knowledge we bring together makes it work so that you are able to get the level of enlightenment you want to get, but it shouldn't stop there. You should be able to trickle down that level of knowledge you've had under this cohort of electoral college. It solidifies your power base. Join forces. What expertise are you bringing to the table? Do you even believe in your message? Those of you who think Nigeria can never get all right, and you want to become advocates or you want to influence policies, you are wasting your time. You are wasting your time because you yourself, you do not believe in your message. You understand, right? Because Nigeria is definitely going to get all right. We know that. It may take us time. It's going to take us a long while, but steadily we're moving towards that place every day by day. Lisa, I've not seen my time. Oh. Please let me know my time. So let's touch a little on advocacy framework. I mean, it's still part of advocacy and policy influencing framework. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm thinking if you could maybe take just 10 more minutes so we could have sufficient time for questions.
Questions. Thank you very much. I needed this. Thank you very much. Yeah. So let's rush. We'll spend so much time already. So let's rush now. This advocacy framework will also help you influencing. And like I said, policy influencing is a subset of advocacy. So step 1, issue selection. What are the issues? Petroleum subsidy removal. Step 2, gather and analyze information on the issues. Remember, I asked you, are you knowledgeable about the subject matter? How knowledgeable are you around the issue you have selected? There's some advocacies you must not lead. The fact that you own the organization doesn't mean you must lead it, because you are not Jesus Christ, or you are not God. You don't have all of the information. No, you don't. No matter how vast you are, you don't have all of the information, right? So gather and analyze this information on issues. What is the research saying? What is data saying? You want to speak about education and you do not know that almost 20 million, we have almost 20 million out of school children. You do not know that though education is a fundamental human right, that fundamental human right in Nigeria, you cannot take the Nigerian government to court because people are not going to school. Because there's a clause in the constitution that makes it impossible for you to take the government to court, though it's part of the unalienable fundamental human rights, right? So you must be able to gather and analyze information. And this is not pedestrian information. These are real, not beer parlor conversation. This one is not APC, PDP, Labour Party information. No, you must be dispassionate when it comes to that level. You must understand the issue. You can always understand the issue when you research. You know, have anybody written a paper around this? Gather those papers together, read it, you know, go to the field for yourself, see it for yourself, you become an expert on the subject matter. You know, step 3, when you do the first 2, you have to develop your advocacy aims and objectives. Why am I even going on this advocacy? When you are able to develop your advocacy aims and objectives, it gives you a guideline. You know, you're hitting the nail on the head. You are not beating around the bush. You are hitting it direct on the head. That's very important. Step 4 is for you to identify your targets. Who are the people I need to speak to? Are these issues local issues? Is it a statewide issue? Are these issues a federal issue? You know, another challenge we have is most times everybody want to talk when it's federal government. Everybody thought Buhari was the problem. Yes, Buhari was a disaster, man. Guys, Buhari was a disaster. I can tell you that for free. You know, but Buhari was not, was not the greatest disaster. State governors were also very terrible disasters in themselves. But everybody was complaining about Buhari. Yes, our federal system is a little messed up. But your state governor has obligations, he has duties and responsibilities. You understand? So when you understand the issue and you put it into context, is this a local issue? Is this a regional issue? Is this a national issue? Is this an African-wide issue? Then you are able to fix that into your advocacy aims and objectives. Then you now identify your targets. Am I speaking to my local government chairman? Or am I speaking to my councillor about this? Or am I speaking to the state governor? Am I speaking to the state house of assembly? Am I speaking to the federal house of reps or the senate? You understand very important things. You have to identify your allies and adversaries. If I took a course on community engagement, I would have exposed you guys to stakeholder management, stakeholder identification and management, because you need to identify your allies and adversaries. In your advocacy journey, there are people who would be stumbling blocks. There are people who you need to face one-on-one. There are people who you need to call out. There are people who you need to negotiate with. There are people who you need to reduce your voice when you're talking to. There are people who you need to shout at when the time comes. You understand? So when you identify your allies, the people that would naturally analyze, identify you and believe in what you're saying, you know, maybe, you know, so you need to understand. Step 6, you need to identify your financial resources. Advocacy is an expensive world over. I tell you the truth. Advocacy is an expensive world over. In case you do not know, the LGBTQ movement, in case you do not know, the movement for tobacco consumption is heavily funded, in case you do not know. You know, in every major thing, every major brand, every major thought process you see today is heavily funded. Advocacy is not cheap, guys. I'll tell you the truth. Advocacy is not cheap. Even if there are cheap ways to go about it, advocacy in itself is not cheap. It requires a whole lot of research. And when I talk about cheap, I'm not talking about money. I'm not just talking about money. You know, who are the people who believe in your message? Who are the people who naturally believe in your message? For example, so if you're talking about education and out of school children, who are the people who resonate more with this message? It's very important, you know. So when you identify them, it's easy for those people to buy, you know, buy what you're pushing. When they're able to buy what you're pushing, they can be able to run with it and show you that level of support. You understand? So identify your resources, human resources, technical resources. You need social media for an advocacy. Are you proficient on social media? No, I'm not proficient on social media. Can I reach out to Lisa? Because Lisa has 20,000 followers on Twitter and she's able to tweet, make one tweet, and a whole lot of people will leverage on it. And unfortunately, those influencers have not realized that they have so much power, so they're going to charge you. Advocacy is not cheap. I'll say it again, advocacy is not cheap. Policy influencing is not even cheap in itself. Step 7, create an action plan. Why do you need to create an action plan? You need to know what you need to do step by step. Today, we are going to visit the office of the local government chairman. But before we visit the office of the local government chairman, I have to carry community along. So I have to visit community here first and understand what the problem is. Let me even ask them if they feel this is a problem. Sometimes communities do not genuinely know that it's a problem until you explain it to them. They say, oh, we now see now. The reason why our children are dying is not because of that old witch that lives on the other side. You remember I told you that the problem of that old witch is a poverty problem. She's broke. She's not really a witch, if you look at it. She's probably so isolated that she can understand, you know, some metaphysical things, because isolation helps you understand the supernatural also. And those of you who are Christians, Jesus had to go into the wilderness, right? When he went into the wilderness 40 days, he got more, you understand? So the devil couldn't tempt him. So when you ostracize old people like that, they know much more than you because they be nature and environment, you know, but like I said, put them into an air-conditioned building. Even if they were flying before, they will not fly again because everybody wants to chill and be taken care of. Hard life is not the birthright of anybody. You understand? So when you are able to create your action plan, you can now say, the first thing I'll do is to do a research to understand the problem of the community. When I do the research, I'm able to now share with the community, from this research, this is what we think the problem is. This is the reason why children are dying, because we've tested the water. The water contains alkaline, or it contains iron, or it contains something that is harmful to the children. And so the children are having protruding tummies, or the children are malnourished because they are deficient, because they're deficient in vitamin A, blah, 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 blah. Their bones are not strong because they're deficient in vitamin D. You know the problem through research. So it's now easy for you to be able to create a solution with the community. So when you're advocating on behalf of a community, there must be a part of the process, co-created action plan. And you now say, okay, this. So tomorrow we'll now go to the community and engage with the women. Next tomorrow we'll engage with the youth. Why are you doing all of this? You want their buy-ins. The moment they buy into what you're sharing with them, it's now easy for them to now support you. They now become a part of your advocacy. So you move from for marginalized people and beneficiaries to with marginalized and beneficiaries, and then you finally achieve a point where they can be able to do these things on their own. So your action plan tells you what next you need to do. After every activity, you come back, you evaluate. Monitoring and evaluation becomes very important at this point. Then the step 8 is to implement, monitor, and evaluate. Implement. Sometimes you also need to move things around. So before, you thought that before you met with the local government chairman, you'd have probably met with everybody. So you say in the month of June, I should meet with the women group, the youth group, the community leader, all the people, children in the community, head teacher in the community block, because you're talking about education and all of those stuff. But you realize that it's taking longer time. You have the action plan. Go back to the action plan, adjust what you have to. That's why monitoring and evaluation is important. This strategy did not work today. Let's take it out. Let's bring in new strategy. And that's why you also need to have a team. You need to have people who believe in your message. You need to have people in the community who understands what you're talking about, because you've been able to shed more light on what you're talking about with them, so they understand better, and then you're able to now have your advocacy framework to be able to deliver on a solid policy influencing strategy. Now, this is an abridged version of this course. We hope that as we continue to go, like I said, we're going to get to the point where we'll have physical sessions, so that we'll test out all of these things. We'll test out all of these things. I've taken out all those practical part of this course, but I hope that with this few points of mine, I've been able to convince you and not to confuse you on the subject of advocacy and policy influencing. Thank you guys for listening. Over to you, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sayo. It's always a pleasure, as usual. I was vetted throughout the lecture. It's obvious that you enjoy what you do and you have so much passion for it. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us this evening. Do we have questions? Please, you can just indicate with a show of hands or type it in the chat box if your environment is noisy. Okay, Cynthia, please, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Busayo. My question is basically on how to get into the rooms. So when you spoke about the various steps, right? In fact, when you spoke about power, you also mentioned being able to sort of get into the right rooms, forge collaborations, join forces. But I realized that it's always very difficult to do that, especially in a country like Nigeria, because of course, you mentioned the abuse of a lot of civil societies. It may be from a point of suspicion, lack of trust, or just basically the selfishness, even from the leaders amongst these marginalized communities or spaces. There is that blockade that sort of causes a stumbling block when you're very passionate about a particular cause and you're trying to get, to get someone to pay attention or listen to your voice, or, get to feel the passion like you've experienced or you've expressed today about what it is you want to advocate about. How can we get into those rooms like you did or like your organizations did? If you can just share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Do we have any other questions so that I can lump those questions together and so that I can respond to them, together? Any other question? Wow. These cohorts are really smart people. We have less questions this time. Other cohorts just bombard us the whole lot of questions. Lisa, what was the screening like on these cohorts?
No, it was still the usual.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions?
No, I don't think we have any at the moment. Okay. I can just see Chinaza's hand up. Okay, Chinaza, please, you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bisola. It's a privilege to still listen to you again. I met you the first time at Bisayo. I met you at first at Yaga Africa sometime 2 months ago. So my question is now, you said something about you might be trying to solve a problem on school buildings, why their problem is actually school materials for education. Now, what I have to ask is, do you have to ditch your own idea to help the community? Since you as a person, you already know that, okay, this is a problem that they have, but so do you have to leave your own the idea that you know that, okay, these people need this, okay, they need school materials like books and the rest of them, but you're realizing that they also do not have buildings to study in. So do you leave the buildings and provide school materials, or do you just find a way to do the both of them at the same time, considering the fact that you know that this is what they want and this is also what they need as a community? So how do you do that in such a scenario?
All right, great. I understand the question. Sunday Timothy, would you want to go ahead?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for this wonderful section. Yeah, my question is, if you want to embark on advocacy, do you need to take permission from maybe the local government chairman or the governor or any of the community leaders, or you just go into any community to start your advocacy? Because it happened to me when in our organization where we went to a community and some people came after us and I was like, who gave us permission to enter that community for advocacy? So I want to know, do we need a permission or you just go into any community to take on your advocacy? Thank you, sir.
Great. Any other question? I see a question on the chat box. Can you throw more light on the third type of advocacy? Okay. All right. Any other questions? So let's dive deeper into these questions. Okay. So thank you guys for these questions. Let me start with the question from the chat box. It was asking about the third types of advocacy. We said there are 3 types of advocacy: geographical advocacy, advocacies that are tied to timing, single issues or a range of issues advocacy. So I think you're asking, Kristen, Emeka Kristen, please let me know. Are you asking about this? That's the single or multiple ranges of advocacy, or you're just speaking to, or what exactly are you asking about? Okay, so why? Okay, you're speaking to that. Okay, great. So I took education. No, so let's use water. I took water, right? And I said, because a community has a problem of water, if you extrapolate that problem of water, it concerns other major big issues, right? So because a community doesn't have water, the health of the children are affected. When children when they're either throwing up or stooling, they are not able to go to school. So that means there's an interruption in their education because of water. When they are sick, there is no healthcare facility, primary healthcare facility in the community. So their healthcare needs are not taken care of. primary health care is not provided in the community. When there is terrible water, you also realize that parents who do not want their children to be sick would have to take from the little money they are using to transact business to pay for hospital, because there is no primary health care, which is supposed to be free, by the way, in their communities. So water alone, your advocacy around water alone, which is one, can spiral into education. It can spiral into healthcare. It can spiral into the economy of the parents. You understand? So yeah, so that's what it means. It means that sometimes advocacy could be one issue. Sometimes advocacy could be a collection of too many issues, but in all of these things, what is important is your focus. What are my advocacy points? Because, see, guys, and I'll say this anywhere I find myself, right? The only person that can fix the problem of this world is God. You are not God. Take the one you can and leave the rest before God and man. Because if you do not have the skill or the resources to dabble into other issues, right, you may find yourself getting more frustrated because of the enormosity of the issues that you get distracted from that one you are trying to solve. So if I am you and I get into a community, understanding my resources, I would probably want to focus on water, because I know that if I focus on water, I can be able to solve other issues in the long run, because there are other issues that strings along. You understand? I'll be able to solve the example I gave you, the misconceptions of community, who now goes and says that the reason why children are dying from protruded stomach is because a witch is eating them. Did you understand what I mean? So the community now realizes that our problem is not the witch. Our problem is the kind of water our children drink. You understand? So it's important that you study the focus, understand the broad perspective, but study the focus. If not, you get overwhelmed and you miss it. And the first question was like, how do we get into the rooms? This is a big question. If I drilled into stakeholder management, which is a subset of community engagement, right? Lisa, maybe we can talk about this, or maybe we can take this. We have to do something around community engagement, also, so that people are able to understand the interconnectedness of these concepts and these ideas. So this question would easily have been, be understood if there was a session around, community engagement and how to get into the room. We call it community penetration, right? And this community penetration cuts across various stakeholders, government stakeholders, citizens as stakeholders, community governance structures. Now, the truth of the matter is there is no one size fits all when it comes to how to get into the room. There are sometimes people bring you into the room. There are sometimes you kick the room door open. There are sometimes, you open with a key. You understand? That key could be relationships. That key could be the fact that in building your advocacy, you finally understood, that you have this resource, or you have this person who can believe your message and he has access and he can grant you access. So it's not cast in stone, guys. So let me answer this question with this practical example. I think I've given this example before in one of these cohorts. We had a mandate of the USAID, for example, to get 3 state governments in Nigeria to 3 states to have a new water law, for the governors to sign on those water law, and for those water laws to become existent, and so that communities can be able to have access to potable water. Guys, follow this story carefully. In one of the states, Taraba State precisely, USAID, through its agents, have been in that state for 3 years. We came in at the 3rd year of this project. They had not been able to get the State House of Assembly to pass the law. So we were brought into the project. And I led the team. And because of my work, let me also say, guys, that advocacy and policy influencing takes a while of consistent practice. Remember when I started, I spoke about the skill. It requires a certain level of skillfulness. This knowledge I've shared is important. But when you practicalize it, you get better at it. And that's why monitoring and evaluation is important. This strategy, did it work? No, it didn't work. Let's change it. Okay, it works, but it can get better if we do this. That's why you need a team that you always come back to and you guys are able to brainstorm together. Now, USAID brought us, and as usual, we had people who had done the groundwork. And so I would always advise you, if you are not from a community and you're going for an advocacy in the community, ensure, first of all, that you get somebody in the community. The person may be from that community and not living in the community, or the person may know people in the community. So in my former organization, what we do is that we have people we call community reporters. We have people we now call community champions. You know, they start up as community reporters, then they become community champions. And the purpose was simple, for easy access to communities. Because sometimes if you just, ask yourself the question, wherever you live, if you just see a group of people roaming around in the morning, you call police for them, and there's insecurity everywhere. Don't risk your life, guys. There are proper ways of community penetration and community entry. Now, so we got into Taraba because it was a statewide advocacy that had to do with the executive and the judicial and the legislative arm of government. But a very important set of people we strung along was the community governance structure, right? Now, the USAID didn't ask us to do that. We just knew that in stakeholder management, you cannot do anything for the community without working with the community. So one of the first places we went to was the palace of the paramount ruler. You know, we got there, we did all those rituals, introduced ourselves. The council of chiefs were there, everybody was there. So it made it easier for us, for them to say, wherever you see these people in the community, we know them, cooperate with them. This was the king now speaking, the paramount ruler. He said, help them, support them, anything, they have the authority of the community, to be here. So if you just wake up and go into a community without doing your community entry processes, you are doomed to fail. They will arrest you, they will harass you. You understand? So it requires a skill, guys. It requires skills, guys. You cannot run away from it. We got into, so the moment we're able to get the buy-ins of the community, it became easy for us to do our research work with it. So before anything, when you're creating your action plan, when you talk about research and all of those things, your community penetration or community entry strategy must be top notch. I can't teach us that. We have limited time. I can't teach us that, but it's very important. So the community knows you. They even know you by name. The community has your phone number. I have various community kings and chiefs that will still call me today and ask me, hey, how are you doing, my brother? Thanks for the other day. Thanks for what you guys have done. Government just came and they've started renovating this thing. Thanks for how we've built that level of relationship, trust, and confidence, right? Now, the important part of this conversation, guys, was the fact that we needed this was in October. We needed the state government to sign that bill into law before the end of that year. It was in the first reading of Parliament in the Taraba State House of Assembly. So when we came in, we had our partners and we had a meeting. I said to them, who are the strategic people we need to meet to have conversations with? This was not even in my schedule when I was leaving Abuja. It wasn't even in my schedule. But because of the meetings we've had and the understanding we now had, we said, how do we approach these guys? So the chairman of the water board, said to us, there are few people I think you guys can meet that would be influential. The first person he took us to was the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Water Resources. Now, when we were going to the woman's office, he told us that the governor is going to appoint that woman as the the chairman of the Civil Service Commission of the state. Now, when we got into our office, obviously, courtesy, when you get into government office, you must behave yourself. That's not the place to go and shout solidarity forever. No. When you get to that level, You are not shouting, you are negotiating, you're having conversations. Those of you who like Aluta in this place, that's not the time for Aluta at all. You must understand, you must respect the court, you must respect the courtesies, you know, of the government institutions when you engage with them. It's very important, you know. And so we met with them, and we met with the woman, and when I introduced myself, introduced my team, and I said, first of all, I want to congratulate you because of your stellar performance, because she was a permanent secretary. You know, there were no commissioners actually. She was a permanent secretary. And, you know, I said to her that, I mean, your strides, your good works, you know, in the civil service, I've never met her before. That was the first time I was meeting her. I said, your strides in the civil service, you know, is what has made the governor, you know, to also, you know, appoint you, you know, as the chief of, the person in charge of the civil service of the state. She was shocked. I could see it on her face. How did you guys know? You know, she was all excited because the moment, and this is where street intelligence comes. They don't teach you these things. It's local intelligence. You know, street. You cannot be a Nigerian and not be street-wise. You know how to enter people. It's not flattery. I mean, I wasn't the governor that was going to make her the head of the civil service in the state, but I knew it was coming. The moment I said it to her, she was excited. And after the meeting, we had a very short meeting we had with her. We said, we know that you're a very influential person, you know, but we need to meet the SSG because the SSG is the one who coordinates the affairs of government. He's the one who is going to say to the governor, when this bill comes to your table, please sign it. Sign this bill when it comes to your table. And so, guys, I tell you the truth, and I kid you not, we scheduled a meeting with the SSG for 12 o'clock. When we were getting to the meeting, we got a call from the woman, and she says, the SSG is going to be busy at 12 o'clock. Can you come at 11:30? And I was like, oh, this is good news. Because if we actually came at 12 o'clock, we would have not met the SSG on the table. She called us and said 11:30. And we, you know, hastened up, finished the meeting we're doing, you know, came to the office of the SSG. Guess who we met at the office of the SSG? We met the woman. She was at the office of the SSG because she understood that, you know, we have realized her work, her level of effort in the state. And so she must perform. Even if she doesn't do it before, she must perform in such a way that we would continue to value her work. And so she was at the office of the SSG before us. And also because she knows that she needs to do more so that the SSG sees that she's working more so that, you know, her portfolio, you know, gets changed in good time. By the moment we finished at the office of the SSG, this woman also said to us, there's another person I want you to meet, because obviously the moment we met the SSG on the table, we got the commitment we needed from him. She said, there's another person I want us to, because we're saying, how can we meet, talking about entry, how can we meet the parliament? How can we have a meeting with, you know, the chairman House Committee on Water and the speaker? The woman said to us, the speaker is not in country. But you see, the speaker's wife is a very powerful person in the state also because of the husband. He says, if you can meet with the speaker's wife, she's going to be able to create an appointment where you can meet with the speaker. She didn't tell us to meet the speaker's PA. She says, meet with the speaker's wife, because the speaker's wife would have XYZ, you know, and influence us to be able to meet with the speaker. But she says, there's another person I need you to meet. This person is a friend of the governor, the closest person to the governor. He's the chief of staff to the governor. The SSG is important, but the chief of staff is also much more important, you know, because of the relationship that person plays with the governor. And she said to us, she said, when you meet the chief of staff was the former speaker of the State House of Assembly. So the chief of staff, who now is on the side of the executive, still has influence in parliament. He can be able to make you meet the chairman House Committee of Water and the speaker himself. Now, guys, when we came into Taraba, these were not part of the strategy. It wasn't even on the plan, but we had to remodify everything with superior information we were getting. Guess what? we met with the chief of staff. And we said, the chief of staff, this is what the USAID wants. They are going to give you 1.2 billion to be able to improve water. But what they need is, the policies around it. And that policy needs to be backed up by Act of Parliament. So it needs to become a law. We need you to use your influence and speak to the speaker to expedite the process of passing the bill, because the bill was great. It was a very great bill. You understand? Now, when the bill comes in, we need you to superimpose on the SSG and the governor and the the attorney general of the state, so that this can be expedited. Now, these meetings gave us 3. In fact, the next day, a meeting was fixed. The speaker was not in Taraba, but the meeting was fixed with the Chairman House Committee on Water. So the next day, we met the Chairman House Committee on Water, and we had this meeting and had this agreement. A guy told us that the Chief of Staff had already called, the SSG has already called, and told them to hasten the process because this bill came as an executive bill, blah, blah, blah. Guys, when we went back to USAID's office in Taraba, and we said, this is the commitments we have gotten, these are the commitments we've gotten, and we took a commitment form that they signed with their signature, and we gave it to them, they laughed. They've been on this for 3 years, right? Now, I tell you, I kid you not, before we closed that year, because we closed on the 23rd, we closed on the 22nd of December that year, on the 20th of December, Parliament passed that law, passed the water bill. It wasn't because we're professionals. It was because we studied on was airtight. We're able to achieve the aim USAID brought us into the project. So what the USAID office in Taraba couldn't achieve, I can tell you this, go and verify, Google it, you would see it. It's a law, the law on Tawasco that created Tawasco, the law that created, the water bill in Taraba State currently today, was our work, right? And it was just because we utilized all of these channels of engagement to ensure that bill was passed. And to the USAID gave them 1.2 billion to be able to, continue the development of the work they are called. So guys, how do you get into the rooms? It's strategy. Who are the power brokers? How then do you meet people? Sometimes you have to send letters and tell them we are coming, introducing blah, blah, blah. We want to have a meeting with you. They may not respond the first letter, you send the second letter. Follow up on the letter. You may go, sometimes we go to government offices and we neglect the clerk, those people that collect letters from you. They are very influential people. They have been there for 20-something years. They know everywhere. They know where your letter can get to and will not come out again. So sometimes when you want to engage government and you just see the gate man or you see the clerk and you don't give them reverence because you think they are not the commissioners you want to meet. Now, commissioner will come and go. They are still there. The civil servants, don't joke with them. They're very powerful people. I think I've been able to use this to answer so many questions. Do you need permission for an LGR? You don't need, for an advocacy, the only people you need to have on your side when you're starting is the community. You don't, what is an advocacy when you need permission from local government? No, now. Are you a local government employee? No, you don't need any permission from any local government to do anything you want to do. All what you need to do is the moment you gain your legitimacy within the community, you can now reach out to the local government and say, dear local government chairman, introducing XYZ. This is what we're working on. We want to have a meeting with you. Kindly give us a comfortable date that you understand that we can, have this meeting. Then the moment, sometimes the local government people will now go to the community and confirm, we have a letter from, do you know these people? They say, yes, we know them. We know these people. They have they are our partners, then it's easy for you to penetrate those government offices. Sometimes, if you do not have the resources to go to, and you think the issue is a personal issue, you don't need the permission of any local government. You don't need the permission of any government to advocate when it affects you directly. If there's a pothole on my street and I know that is the responsibility of the local government chairman or local government office official, I'll go to the local government office, introduce myself, tell them where I live. This is my complaint. I need to have a meeting with someone who can get this thing fixed. That's what more Nigerians need to begin to do. You don't need the permission of government, to do advocacy. The problem you may have is your community entry system. And that's something you probably need to learn. You need to learn strategies, on how to get into community penetration. It's very, very important. Okay, this question is very important. It says, when solving a problem and you notice that there's another challenge that is most important, do you ditch your plans? No, don't ditch your plans. Oh. Please don't ditch your plans. You can't, because I know that you've probably collected money from donor and you need to report. If you go and report to donor that, the money you gave me, I went to the community and discovered that their problem is not school building. Their problem is the quality of education. The donor didn't give you money to do that. And that's why I discourage donor funding for advocacy. I discourage it for advocacy. It doesn't mean that you cannot take donor funding and do advocacies with it. But this is a strategy I developed because, because something is not working, you don't ultimately throw it out. You must find a way around it. So what I do is when I get into a community and I discover that their major issue, is not the issue I'm addressing, I string that issue along. I'm not going to report it to the donor. I'm only going to report it to the donor when I want to tell them that there are other opportunities in XYZ we need to do work around. So it even gives me more impetus to request for more funding. So for example, we're looking at tracking primary school building infrastructure. And we discover that even with the building, children will not come to school. I would go back to the donor and say, while I am working on this, these are the issues that we've noticed. It's going to be in your report. Some donors, nothing concerns them with that. But the truth of the matter is, there are times when I string those issues along. I don't report it. Worst case, I don't report it, right? Lisa has told me my time is up. I may not be able to take any more questions. But with these few points of mine, guys, I hope I've been able to educate you and not to move you too far from where you are. But I hope we've been able to gain one or two things from this session. It's always my pleasure to come back to the Electoral College across various times to engage. So thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed having this conversation with this cohort. And thanks to all those my friends who also joined. When I put the when I put the flyer out, I had a whole lot of people who say, send the link, we'll join it. I've seen some of them come in and go out. Thanks guys for coming to listen to this session. And I hope you gained something. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, class.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Busayo. It's always an insightful lecture, always. I'm sure some people might want to connect with you. Maybe you could drop your social media handles in the chat box, or you could just say it so I could type it.
Absolutely. You can check me out at Dami Busayo at I'm giving you my email. www.damibusayo.com. You can also reach me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. Busayo Damilare Murakinyo. I'm on LinkedIn. The same thing. Busayo Damilare Murakinyo. I'm on Instagram. I tried getting on TikTok, you see, but I think my generation has left me. The younger generation has left me. So I have a TikTok account, but there's nothing there. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, though not too active. On Twitter, it's at Dami Busayo. On Instagram, it's at Dami Busayo also. Then my website is there. Feel free to stop over. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. It's been such an interesting lecture. Thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of people will probably want to connect with you after the class. I can see someone saying we need a second class. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time, sir. And thank you to everyone who joined and stayed through till the end. Remember, you're submitting your assignments tomorrow, so I hope you're already putting the finishing touch to it. All right, so Thank you once again, sir, on behalf of the Electoral College. Thank you for always honoring our invitation and for always dishing great value. We truly appreciate it. All right, and this is good evening to everyone. Please, can we just appreciate our facilitator before we call it an evening?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
So pleasure.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much. It's been nice having you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Have a great week.
All right, thank you so much once again.